The Śūraṅgama Sutra, Volume 8, 65. When it burns the breath, it becomes black smoke and purple fumes. When it burns the sense of taste, it becomes scorching hot pellets and molten iron gruel. When it burns the sense of touch, it becomes white-hot embers and glowing coals. When it burns the mind, it becomes sparks of fire that shower everywhere and whip up and inflame the entire realm of space. The second is the retribution of hearing, which brings an evil result. The karma of hearing intermingles, and thus at the time of death one first sees gigantic waves that drown the whole world. The deceased one's spiritual consciousness falls into the water and rides the current into the unintermittent hell. There, two kinds of phenomena may occur. One is open hearing, in which it hears all sorts of noise, and its essential spirit becomes confused. The other is closed hearing, in which there is a stillness devoid of hearing, and its soul sinks into oblivion. When the waves from hearing flow into the hearing, they become scolding and interrogation. When they flow into the seeing, they become thunder and roaring and evil poisonous vapors. When they flow into the breath, they become rain and fog, permeated with poisonous organisms that entirely fill up the body. When they flow into the sense of taste, they become pus and blood and every kind of filth. When they flow into the sense of touch, they become animals and ghosts and excrement and urine. When they flow into the mind, they become lightning and hail, which ravage the heart and soul. The third is the retribution of smelling, which brings an evil result. The karma of smelling intermingles, and thus at the time of death one first sees a poisonous vapor that permeates the atmosphere near and far. The deceased one's spiritual consciousness wells up out of the earth and enters the unintermittent hell. There two kinds of phenomena may occur. One is penetrating smelling, in which one is thoroughly infused with the evil vapors and one's mind becomes distressed. The other is blocked smelling, in which one's breath is cut off and there is no passage, and one lies stifled and suffocating on the ground. When the vapor of smelling invades the breath, it becomes cross-examination and torture. When it invades the seeing, it becomes fire and torches. When it invades the hearing, it becomes sinking and drowning, molten metal, and boiling liquids. When it invades the sense of taste, it becomes putrid or rancid foods. When it invades the sense of touch, it becomes the actions of ripping apart and beating to a pulp. It also becomes a huge mountain of flesh, which has hundreds and thousands of eyes, and which is sucked and fed upon by numberless worms. When it invades the mind, it becomes ashes, pestilent air, and flying sand and gravel, which cut the body to ribbons. The fourth is the retribution of tasting, which brings an evil result. This karma of tasting intermingles, and thus at the time of death one first sees an iron net ablaze with a raging fire that covers over the entire world. The deceased one's spiritual consciousness passes down through this hanging net, and suspended upside down it enters the unintermittent hell. There two kinds of phenomena may occur. One is a sucking air which congeals into ice, so that it freezes the flesh of his body until it bursts open. The other is a spitting blast of air, which spews out a raging fire that roasts his bones and marrow to a crisp. When the tasting of flavors passes through the sense of taste, it becomes what must be acknowledged and what must be endured. When it passes through the seeing, it becomes burning metal and stones. When it passes through the hearing, it becomes sharp weapons and knives. When it passes through the sense of smell, it becomes a vast iron cage that encloses the entire land. When it passes through the sense of touch, it becomes bows and arrows, crossbows and darts. When it passes through the mind, it becomes flying pieces of molten iron that rain down from out of space.